Don't worry. Like and subscribe. Airtime Podcast. Turn that bell on.
Cody,
don't miss an episode.
This is the battery that you grabbed this morning? I don't really ramp anymore, but it is there.
Yeah, I mean sometimes you just want to do it.
And the thing is, it might have been fucking you if you filmed it slow and you have to like try to fuck with it in here. Like you don't want to speed it up here and then ramp it. Yeah. You want to like.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. Thank you for tuning in. We have absolute legend boss, somebody who has destroyed the backcountry. All aspects of it too, all the different niches. Elias Elhardt on the podcast. Thanks for making time to come on the show, boss. How are you?
Well, thanks for having me here. I'm doing well, thank you. How are you doing?
And we were just touching base. Maybe we can start here. You are in the editing room currently working on your new film. Maybe touch on what your new film is, who's in the project, and what does editing look like right now?
Yeah, well, we're in the last phases of it, fortunately. It's been a pretty, well, stressful. I'm not sure if stressful. Yeah, it was quite a tight summer in some ways because I was working on two projects simultaneously, and I guess in the past when I was only or mainly snowboarding as my main thing, then obviously the summers were more free. But now like that I got much more into filmmaking myself and directing and all that, like super interesting, and it's something that I really love to do and love to learn in these fields. Then the summers have become very filled as well, because that's of course the time when I can really engage in that. And so yeah, we've spent a lot of time those past couple months to edit the film Invisible Ground, which has been my passion project and my main project this past year. It's with Xavier Delarue.
Oh wow.
But myself, I'm in it as well, and it's around the topic of risk taking and what it means to be vulnerable at large. So not just physically, obviously physically putting your life at risk, snowboarding makes you be vulnerable physically, but also how that correlates with being emotionally vulnerable. And yeah, why do we take so much risk in the first place? And I think that's a subject that I was always really interested in, and I wanted to do that with Xavier because I felt like there was really no one else or no one better to talk to explore this question with than him, who's taken so much risk and explored really the outer boundaries of risk taking in our sport like maybe no one else has. And so I was really happy that we could do this together.
Wow, that sounds really exciting on many levels. For one, because it sounds like a snowboard video I've never watched before. And at this point, they've all been done. So that sounds very interesting to watch. What conclusions did you come up with? Why do you take those risks?
Well, of course, there's a thrill and there's so much beauty in it all. Like there's no doubt about it. But I think beyond all of this, which is obvious and which has been, communicated over and over again in those films, and that's what the narrative we hear. I think we also had to see and admit that there's an element of control that we seek from it, that to prove ourselves, to prove ourselves to the world and prove ourselves of control in something, and especially very dangerous situations. I think that's sort of the proving ground to prove yourself of maybe control that you don't have in every other aspect of your life. So that's where being vulnerable comes in, where I thought it was interesting that the evolvement of Xavier, how, you know, for his first daughter, when she was 3 years old, he got into this huge avalanche. I don't know if you know of it, like this giant avalanche that he's just barely survived. And then after that, he's just kind of pushed the limits even further. And that was something so counterintuitive for me, so interesting. Why would he do that? And now, like, 15 years later, he has another daughter, his second daughter, who's 3 years old, and his relationship with her has changed so much, and he's opening up a lot more to her, and he's a lot more present. And in that regard, yeah, he's changed and he's progressed in his own way. And I thought that was really beautiful, and that was really beautiful to highlight as well, and to to just ask him about his progress to get there where he is now.
Are you two the main athletes in the movie?
Yes.
Rad. Really rad. How was filming with him?
Yeah, it was super good. We didn't have the best season for it, conditions wise, but at the end of the day, it all came together, and I think we're quite lucky in the end that we even got good conditions. And like I already said, a lot of it is about the narrative and the subjects that we engage in. So this really was the framework for us to come together, sleep on a hut. We've also been like touring and sleeping in a tent. So like all these, moments that we shared were super valuable to like have the framework to even engage in some of those topics. And then as for like the bigger action, I had some good filming days on my end that contributed to it. And then Xavier also has, like, of course, a career of footage, like 20 years of career footage that we luckily could access a lot of it, which thanks to Guido, who really, opened that to us. So we're actually quite lucky in terms of like the footage we could access.
Amazing. And when is this film going to be released?
We're going to do a premiere on the 2nd of November here in Innsbruck. It actually already has been played the first time at the Hi-Fi Festival in Annecy. And we're super happy to even receive a prize there. So that was sort of the starting point for this film. And the online release is not really out yet. We'll see when that comes.
I've seen I binge watched quite a few of your films, and I noticed that Vimeo has stamped like staff pick and gave quite a few awards to a lot of your motion pictures. When did you get this itch to dive into filming, directing, and producing?
So I think it's super beautiful that as a snowboarder, as a professional snowboarder, you can go through all these different phases. And for me, it started from quite classic, started from making, going to local contests, to then bigger contests, getting a sponsor and whatnot, and then doing the slopestyle tours and Aaron styles and all that. And then after that, I felt like I really wanted to break out of this and get into backcountry riding. And this is really what I loved doing best. This is where my heart was at. And then I was doing that for a couple of years, maybe 4 or 5 years as well. And I loved that. But also this sort of had its time where I dedicated all my energy towards like making video parts and all that. And then I also got the chance to ride a lot with Gigi, and we've made we've been a part of films, snowboard films, where we traveled the world and like filled the whole thing. So it was going beyond a classic video part, but it stayed sort of within the frameworks of making very much action-based films, snowboard films, where the narrative, if there was any, was just sort of the background to the action. And I felt like I wanted to turn that around and I wanted to tell stories where snowboarding becomes the framework to a subject matter that I wanted to put in the center, at the heart of it all, and really engage in those subjects that I really care about. And I kind of made that shift then, and to do that, I guess I had to initiate it myself, and really get active in the storytelling. And that was also the starting point for me to get involved in all these other areas, such as producing, and in the end now directing. It's a weird term because there's so many things fall under it, but I guess it's to give creative direction to the film, especially when it comes to storytelling.
I think there's no better person to tell the story of snowboarding than a snowboarder who has as much experience in all the different categories, niches of snowboarding. Like you touched on there, you grow up riding the contest scene, air and style, going into the backcountry, jumps, step downs, Alaska, natural selection, filming with Travis Rice, the free ride world tour. You put all that together, you kind of have this deep understanding of how most snowboarders and most action sports athletes like think and how they tick. And so it seems to me like you're like diving deep into what those people think about and then making movies about them. And I think that's a really, really cool and unique approach to making these films.
Well, yeah, thank you for for seeing it that way. I also think it's well, there's something to it that I've experienced a lot of those things, and there's a lot to share for me. For instance, with Xavier, but then again, there's also so many things I I kind of have to catch up on, like when it comes to practical filmmaking. So all these things I really, I'm like, you know, definitely yeah, just learning from all the great people I get to work with. And I guess it's more the human aspect that I can contribute the most to. And I've always been interested in engaging stories. And so this is what like I'm intrigued by. And then all the technical aspects of how to tell a good story, like in terms of like now color grading. Like I love good pictures, but then how to do it technically, it's its own world. So yeah, a lot to learn there.
Yeah, I've recently just bought my first digital camera. I've been shooting film for a while. And because there's only so much to play around with on film cameras, I feel like I didn't pick it up quickly, but over the last 8 or so years, I figured it out. If I shoot a roll of film, 90% of the photos are turning out how I want them. But I got this digital camera and there's so many settings and you can do so much with it. Like I imagine when you go from like a basic like 16 mm camera to opening up the red camera, it's like the possibilities are endless. But if you don't know how to use the camera, it's like there's so many functions and they're so complex that I find myself getting overwhelmed with the limitless possibilities of these cameras. Sometimes I'm like, can there just be like black, white, day mode, night mode? So
Certainly, no, I see what you mean. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it is freedom, but it's also kind of overwhelming.
I'll reiterate that I think that it's really rad that you're making these snowboard movies because there's something about snowboarders who grew up that loved snowboarding, documenting snowboarding that have the ability to create and make the best snowboard movies. It's like there's no argument about that. Snowboarders make the best snowboard movies. And I like that you're not trying to just like redo Standard, redo Absinthe. It's like a new approach. And I like the depth in it, especially as I look for more meaning in my own life.
Well, thank you. I'm happy you liked some of those things we've been working on. Of course, it's always a team effort. Film is such a such a team effort, and I think when it comes all this expertise, big part of it is working with the right people. And yeah, that's what I like about it as well. It's like you assemble a team, and then I don't know, you just get to work on something together. It's much more collaborative than a snowboard career is, which I really like. At the end of the day, as a snowboarder, you do your tricks. Like, yeah, you're in a team, but still, it's still like your video part or whatever. And then the other thing is like, it's a film, it's our film. Like, yeah, you may have initiated it or produced or directed it, like knowing that all of those steps could have never happened without so many people to like work on this together, and to also feel very much involved and like a part of it. And so I think that's actually, yeah, the beauty of what I feel like I get to do now. And also one thing I think you get to always like highlight as well, because it's so easy to say like, oh yeah, I've done that film or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's like so many people working on this together.
You're pushing yourself out of this video part. Once you do that over and over, it just feels really redundant. At least for me right now, it's been really exciting to tackle this podcast because it feels like it's opening another whole aspect and avenue of snowboarding, keeps me kind of creative. When you film as many video parts as you have, I imagine a big part of this, I want to make these movies, is I've done the video part. I've done, like, eventually it starts to feel like a little, you've done a big method, you've done a cab 9, and there's probably a lot of, wow, there's a way that I could capture this cab 9 and this method and tell a different story. And I feel like that in itself must be really exciting for you to kind of like be the snowboarder, but now to like put everything that you've ever thought could be cool behind a video and like piece all the puzzles together to make something new and fresh that hasn't been done before. Because for me, when I watch all these videos right now that hit the shelf, a lot of the time I'm like, man, this has been done before and over. And if you watch like the Mac Dog movies, it's almost like he's made every snowboard movie. It's like the fast paced punk one, the more hip hop one, the slow pace, the storytelling one. And I feel like the space that you're pushing into right now, there's not a lot of people that if any are doing that. And storytelling and snowboarding, if I'm just being fully honest, I feel like is a really hard look to pull off. And there's the camera work needs to reflect the voiceover, and the voiceover needs to be reflected in the snowboarding behind, and to get all of those things in sync makes a good like documentary style film. And I think the first one, correct me if I'm wrong, but that Contradiction film that you made in 2019, I watched that when it came out. I watched it again a couple days ago just to get refreshed. And I felt like you did a really good job of storytelling, but not making it cheesy, which is really difficult to pull off. You know what I mean? Do you feel the same way?
Yeah. Well, I think in a way it's so beautiful that we have our community of enthusiasts just loving snowboarding, and we, with this community, we're so used to also watch films of snowboarding, and I think that's so much ingrained in our culture. And then though there has been, I think, the necessity, well, it's always been evolving, continuously evolving, and then also every generation takes it and evolves it even further, and then every audience also wants to see something new. We all grow up and we want to see something new, and I think a lot of people would share maybe that longing or idea that they want to see more. They don't want to just not watch any snowboarding anymore, but they want to see more than just, say, a trick flick, which can be great as well, but I think it just opened more space. And so I think we've just all been in that together, like as viewers, as people who've participated in all this. And then I think I was just seeking to find these new ways to, well, in some ways build bridges away from snowboarding, but like not, cut ties with anything, but like just build bridges onto new venues and to explore other areas. And I feel like Contradiction was the first time I really wanted to do that, because I felt a little bit quite a bit the conflict inside of me of doing this redundant thing and not really seeing so much value in my position as an athlete as well for the society and other things I would care about. And I wanted to, I was studying psychology at the time, and I felt like that was like becoming more and more of a stretch between the two worlds I was trying to like whatever hold in my hands. And so I felt like, I wanted to make an effort or an attempt to bring it together. And that was the film, where I felt like, okay, I want to throw all this into the film and like, or into one thing that I engage in, where I bring different topics together. And yes, combine it with snowboarding and shared with the audience that I have in snowboarding, or the culture and community that I'm a part of as well. And so that was the approach with Contradiction. And I think the question that you were getting at, that it's so hard to do something sincere in snowboarding and not feel like it, like not that it feels like you're just trying to squeeze your action shots in and have like a story to like kind of hold it all together. I think firstly, you just need a topic that was really so real, and that people want to follow that topic in the first place, and that this very topic is so closely entwined with snowboarding that it's only natural to show snowboarding as a part of it, because snowboarding is a part of like that story, that narrative that you're engaging into. And I think that's like, it's not so many stories that you can do that with, because we're also not like, I guess when I say snowboarding, it's also often like beautiful performance based snowboarding that you want to show really beautiful, like great snowboarding. And so I guess you got to find stories that can hold that space, and that this can be naturally included.
Yes. Wow, there was a lot of amazingness in that. One thing I want to get a point just before we kind of keep flying here is, like, don't get me wrong, I'll always be a sucker for like a classic snowboard movie. You know what I mean? I love that shit, but at the same time, I love putting on like a nice film, like, and enjoying that on my TV. That's not a classic snowboard movie. Like, especially as I develop. A question I have for you, you said you were studying psychology. Did you realize, maybe this is but do you feel like you opened Pandora's box once you started studying psychology? And did it make you think more about like your purpose and why you're snowboarding and the real reason why you're charging in Alaska? Did it make you like overthink your snowboard career once you opened up this, you're studying basically why humans do what they do? So did it make you question why you're doing what you're doing?
Yes, but I feel like I've always been somehow like questioning myself and what I was doing too much already, like that it's a continuous thought process that I cannot even stop anyway. So like it in some ways only gave me the tools to think about myself and others a little more structured and within concepts, which really helped, and like, which I really like. I love that, because I really feel like we think within the framework of the topics that we surround ourselves with. And so when I was studying, I love that, because then all of a sudden you think through those concepts of understanding humans and then their behavior. And then there's of course different concepts of doing it, and you like start to think it through this lens, and it all looks different. It's different ways of looking at the world and humans, and I love that. Like I really it was so refreshing, and it actually was something I always wanted to do and be. I wanted to be a student, and I doing a snowboard career from early on. I wasn't a student when others were, my age, and so I was really happy and fortunate that I could also live through this time and get into that mindset. And yes, again, like I feel like it really enriched my world, yeah, and it only contributed to, say, the rest of my world, which to a big extent was snowboarding.
I personally am fascinated by psychology, and I would love to just study that kind of in the background, even just attending universities for free and just hearing lectures on it. I am such a maybe because of the concussions I've had in my life and stuff like that. I wonder if those have kind of compounded into me thinking about everything I'm doing constantly. So the study of psychology just seems fascinating to me. Are you still studying, or?
No, actually, just around the time of Contradiction, I stopped because like doing those films is so intense time-wise. Like it's insane. It really fills the summers, and then in winter, I'm of course snowboarding and or preparing for those films. So that just made it impossible in some ways to continue time-wise. And also, I was reaching a point studying like where I would have to make the step forward to like decide to become if I was to become a psychotherapist, that's its own sort of practical education where you work as a therapist and you have to have a number of hours, like 500 hours that are supervised. So like it's a huge step that when you enter that process, it's like it's a decision, and it's a whatever 3 years or so full time that you do that, and then to become a psychotherapist. And while I was super interested in the subject matter, like I felt like I wasn't ready for this step, and I I wanted to rather translate that into my life as a professional snowboarder or now filmmaker. And I feel like I loved it to the extent that I've done it, and I feel like it really helps me now to continue doing what I do.
Is there anything that you learned from taking psychology on how to keep a healthy mind?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. The thing though is I think there's so much theory out there, but to be healthy yourself, you cannot be your own therapist. I think that's that. You, you always need a counterpart to like engage in those subjects that maybe you're struggling with. So if that's what you're getting at, you do get ideas of the concepts and everything, but to really engage in like the difficulties of your own life or go through struggles or like this, I think that's why you have that concept of like working through this with therapists, because they can see things you cannot. So in that regard, the studies are not really made for, and are not supposed to be made for that direction. It's more like it gives you understanding, but you need a sort of a different approach to it if you're trying to tackle your own problems.
Why do you think that so many snowboarders at the tail end of their career, whether they made it professional or they were just like local mountain, they lived to just snowboard? I feel like a lot of people, when snowboarding ends or seems to end, they kind of have like this identity crisis. Do you have any insight into why so many snowboarders at the end of their career just kind of like freak out? I'm listening to like the JP podcast on the bomb hole, or you listen to, any of the mega pros who really made it, skateboarding, snowboarding, surfing, all of these podcasts. So many professionals say that like it's the end of their career. There's like Heikki Sorsa, who I just did on the podcast, same thing. He's moved on from snowboarding, and I feel like they kind of feel a little bit like lost afterwards.
Mm. Well, I think because snowboarding is so all encompassing, like it's not just this is your job, like, you know, like other people maybe follow a regular job that's like a part of their identity, that's part of who they are, and that's part of what they do and they spend their life time with.
I love that you said all encompassing there, though. Snowboarding is it takes up all of your time, all of your focus, all of your energy from so many angles. I feel like that was worded perfectly because that's exactly what my life's been since I found snowboarding that's it. No
Yeah,
worries.
no, and I think that's the, you know, like how people like say, oh, snowboarding's not a sport, it's a lifestyle. And yeah, if that also is an expression towards that is like it includes so many areas that are building blocks for your identity of who you are. You're not just like making a good sport, but like it's really going, it's so it touches so many areas as far as like your friends group goes, the way people express themselves, the way they dress, the way that other people, and that's the main part, probably see them is like, oh, it's a snowboarder, whether it's someone like JP Walker, you know, is like the snowboarder. And then it's like, oh, this is the whatever, all the the attributes that he would have put out, you know, it's the gangster hip hop snowboarder. And that's why it's so special that now he's opening up and he's showing all these other parts of himself that have been there all along. I've listened to that podcast and I really loved it. And I thought it was super beautiful the way he talked about it all. But yeah, like he, I think, showed a side of him, but then there's all these other my God, like I'm not a good podcaster here. Sorry. That's being
This is what happens.
um so yeah, I guess, and that's not just for him, but for all of us. Like I think we're just regular guys that love snowboarding, and then we really fall into it, and maybe other areas of our lives are a bit put behind, or you know, and then this is it for our life for like 15 up to 20 years. And then of course when this is slowing down, then you're like, oh, more face to like, okay, what now, what next? And I don't think it's only a question of financial sort of needs that maybe in some cases even covered, you know, some of the very successful professionals, but it's more an identity question. Who are you if you're not a snowboarder? Who are you if you're not the, you know, great professional snowboarder? I think that's something that we all have to find answers to. And it's not a thing of like, you know, like a quick fix. I think it's a process. And I think for me, that's been such a focus to engage in that process. And I feel like I'm still in it, but I put so much effort and focus towards that. And I feel like sometimes it would have been easier to almost follow that role that like I've been practiced for so long, but I really put so much focus in kind of evolving and haunting a new life. Yeah, tailoring a new life. I'm not sure if I said the right word before, but like, yeah, to create something that is more independent from that professional snowboarder that even I cannot identify fully anymore with, you know, like it's a kid's dream. Like I've grown up being 14, telling my mom I want to become a professional snowboarder, but I'm now 34. Like life evolves and dreams change. So I feel like you got to keep up with that as well. And so I feel like it's a continuous process, and it may be the biggest challenge of a, well, I guess the one challenge is to become a professional, and then maybe the other big challenge is to get out of this career and evolve it, progress it into something new.
Yeah, I feel like, well, yes, you articulated that amazing. I really like how your mind thinks. I'm already a big fan of your brain. Way to go. But identity. I feel like snowboarders find it to be well, they find it to be easier to go from snowboarding to the next chapter of their life if they're already working on their next chapter when they're still all encompassed by snowboarding. I feel like snowboarders who are just snowboarders and then it ends, they get a big injury, their sponsors stop, or if they're just a kid who moved to like a ski town and they got to like just move home for whatever reason, that's when they have this identity crisis, where I feel like I've seen a lot of people do this transition, like they're a snowboarder, but then while they're so obsessed with snowboarding, something else gets sparked, and then they can transition from snowboarder to whatever else they're about to become fully infatuated with. So it's just not such an abrupt halt. It's almost like when you see like a girlfriend or a boyfriend leave the relationship but already have another partner lined up. It's easy for that person. They just transition to the other person and they're like, perfect, I'm in love again, this person. But to the other person, it just ended and they have nothing. It's just like over. And it's so I feel like it's really important that when you have a passion and when you are absolutely obsessed with something, it's still wise to let your mind explore other areas. So you're not fully all your chips in with just snowboarding, which is tough because snowboarding's fucking amazing.
So are you suggesting being in a relationship, you should also...
Hey, you take that how you want to take it. I'm not, but you know what I mean though? I just feel like the person who already has the exit strategy and they already have the other person kind of lined up, it just seems easy for that person, you know, maybe harder in the future, but I feel like they make
that's
the
the
transition.
thing. That's the thing. I think if you do want to make that comparison, which is of course a little bit of a wild stretch, but funny, and there is certainly some parallels. I think, yeah, you may make it easier, but in some ways. But then there's some processes you just have to go through regardless, and it's hard either way. And when I just come back to say snowboarding again, because I cannot think in both concepts now, like it just, yeah, it's hard either way. Like it's hard to build something new aside from a sometimes full-time job that like is still very engaging and there's a lot going on, and then to I don't know, it's interesting. It's a tough one because I don't know what is an easy way. Sometimes I found it, you know, easy, like not easy, but like sometimes I also thought there was something to it for people that had that abrupt end, that were forced to like really throw themselves into something new and not have like this ongoing role that they like fill, say 60-70% of their time. So in these other 40%, you can only do so much. And then once like it's 100%, you're like, okay, now I can move to another place, or now I can really throw myself into this new chapter of my life. So I think that there is really something to that as well. And I really don't know what's better. I think there's just different ways of doing it, and I think none of them is easy. And I think it's necessary, however, for everyone, because that's the beauty and the difficult part of being a professional snowboarder. It will end and you will have another life after it. I always thought there was so much beauty to this as well, because it's not like a job you will do whatever till you're retired. It's more like, oh, this is a phase of my life and it will eventually come to an end, and then I will have another chance to rediscover myself or to question what I want to do. So I think we'll all have to go through this, every professional athlete, and probably in other areas as well. Like, and then how you do it, I think it's never easy, and it's just different styles.
Do you feel like Gigi played a role in the way you think of snowboarding? And the reason why I'm asking is because I feel like he's older. He seemed to play a little bit of a mentor role in your life, as I know you've filmed alongside him for a lot of years. Do you think that he kind of does he also think like this? I'm curious to know how your conversations flow when you guys are together, and kind of what he was like as a mentor.
Yeah, well, when it comes to that, I think it helps to make it more concrete other than just those theoretical. Like for him, it's been Slash, right? The snowboard brand he's been building. And this he took that as an opportunity that he could even build an own brand and learn on all these other areas, from product development to distribution, marketing, and all these things. Like, he wouldn't have been involved as much as a professional snowboarder. And so he took that chance and learned from it. And he said, like, oh, this is my study, you know, this is my like university, or like, I don't know how he expressed himself, but this has been his way to learn and to grow out of it. And I think he's dreamt of having his own snowboard brand, and he is following that. And I don't think it's been easy by no means, but he's really done it, and I think that's beautiful. And I really, yeah, appreciate all the hard work he's putting into it, and really to create that brand himself. And of course, then aside from that, he has a family, so he's kind of made those steps forward out of that like everlasting kid that he in some ways still is when he's strapped in a snowboard. But that's a beauty. He has these other areas that he has really grown up and evolved, and I think that's great to see.
Contradiction. Tell us a little bit about this film, just for anyone who hasn't watched it. And my personal favorite part was with Kevin from Mount Baker, older gentleman who is absolutely obsessed with snowboarding, and maybe draw a parallel from what we're just talking about to Kevin. And you were saying that Gigi turns into a little bit of a kid on the board. So, so maybe touch on the film and then speak to Kevin, because I feel like that all ties in what we've been kind of talking about here.
Yeah, well, first off, I guess, was the name Contradiction. So I wanted to make that word play between contradiction and addiction, which, well, is like, I could never let it go. Like, I love it way too much not to snowboard. It's become such a big part of my life. But then I also saw so much controversy in it, which I feel like I wasn't contributing really to the society in any way. And quite in contrast, I was like more, engaging in more consumption, or advocating for more consumption as an athlete, or jetting around the world to go to all these different locations with a plane. And so a lot of those things that I was doing, I wasn't too sure about, like, and I didn't know how to like fit it into a picture, in a cohesive picture. And so I thought that actually maybe our lives are like this, that they don't totally fit into a cohesive picture, only if we twist it, which I guess often happens, that we twist things so much until they fit somehow in a cohesive narrative. But that's just, I feel like, I don't know, it's hard. And so sometimes I feel like it's the honest way to like engage in the contradiction that we all face in our lives, and especially for me personally as a professional snowboarder, and to expose that and to ask ourselves, like, how can we take that as a starting point to really change things towards maybe a less contradictory lifestyle, but then accepting that a part of it will still remain, And I think that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to not hide the contradiction, but put the spotlight towards it, and see what this can help to, well, take action in some ways. And in that journey to engage in that subject, I wanted to visit some of those companions throughout my career, one of them being Gigi, as you've mentioned, who I've spent a lot of time with. One of them being Arthur, who's the same age as me, and we've really had like these parallel careers, and he's a very good friend of mine. And I wanted to talk to him and to Gigi about their thoughts on the subject matter, how they feel, being sort of an grown-up kid, playing around in the snow still. And like, how do you take responsibility? How do you find purpose in what you do beyond sort of your own fun? And in that journey, one of the characters that I talked to, like, who's now a great friend as well, is Kevin, who's 64 at the time, Mount Baker local. hardcore snowboarder who's just really dedicated to this lifestyle. And I think he's offered us a perspective as to, okay, what if you dedicate your whole life to it? If this is it, this is the lifestyle you identify so much with, that even at the age of 64, being retired or almost retired. No, he's actually still cleaning carpets. Back then he was. This is all you want to do, and how does he look on these subjects? How like, so that, I guess, was the quest we set out for in Contradiction. And yeah, I was really happy I could have these conversations and with all these different characters in the film.
How would you describe Arthur to somebody? Like most, he's kind of closed off as far as, I don't think he's elusive, he's kind of got like a Keegan Valeka kind of vibe to him, which
Yeah.
is also just really intriguing. I've done a bit of traveling with him. I've gotten the pleasure to do some snowboarding with him. I am a huge Arthur Longo fan, but you're a close friend of him. So how would you describe Arthur? Maybe the personality more than just the riding, as everybody knows his riding is something very special.
I think he's very sincere. I think he's very caring. And he has a lot more there than just great riding. He just loves snowboarding. That's why he does it. But I'm not sure if you've seen some of his pictures. He's also painting amazing stuff. But yeah, lately I had that conversation with him, and he's like, "Oh, Elias, I feel like I'm a snowboarder. Like, I don't know, I'm a rider." I don't know how he expressed himself. So yeah, he's also going, I guess, through that like questioning phase, like, who am I? Like, who am I for the future? And I think he's just really passionate about what he does, and I love seeing that. And certainly he's one of the best snowboarders I've ever seen. Um, so yeah, I really like him as a friend, and I think personally there's a lot, like a lot of depth there that I see in him.
In one of your films, you kind of touch on that, how you can see in somebody's snowboarding if they love it. I don't know exactly how you articulated it, but it was amazing. You were like, if I see somebody fully infatuated, in love with the moment while they're snowboarding, how can it not be beautiful? Like,
Mm,
how can somebody's snowboarding not be amazing if you can see that they're putting everything that they have into it at that moment? And that's kind of the premise of what you said. And I was like, that was one of the most amazing things I've ever heard anybody say, because it's so true. And you use the comparison of somebody dancing, I believe. And
mm,
you're like, if somebody's dancing and they're so into it and they're grooving and they're feeling it, like when I watch somebody do that and they look fearless and they're just in the moment, I'm like, who cares if they're a good dancer? It's just like watching another human just commit on that level and be so vulnerable to let them just be themselves in the moment. I'm like, damn, that is so sick. Because when you see somebody who's new at snowboarding and they're not that good, but they do this like crazy shifty and they land on the box and they jump off the box and they're not really sure and they're not following any of the rules and regulations about how you're supposed to ride the box. They're just doing it because it's fun and trying to survive, but they're putting everything that they have into that moment. And there's something that is so special about that. And I thought that was really cool that you articulated that in one of your films. I'm not sure if that was in Contradiction, but I did watch
mm.
it and I thought that was a really cool thought.
Oh, thanks. I think that was in one of the Transworld episodes, actually. We've when I filmed with Transworld at the time, we've done these episodes, and maybe that was in one of those.
Yeah, it might have been an insight behind the scenes or
Yeah,
something, maybe.
inside. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So I think it's maybe easier to envision or picture with the example of dancing. Like you said, I think because it's so daunting to like step on the dance floor to show yourself. And I think it's daunting for all of us. And I think if you take as a premise, you gotta be a great dancer, you gotta have all these moves to even step there, then it's hard and certainly a lot more daunting even. And I think that's why we take so much encouragement or even see beauty in people just doing it regardless, even if they don't have all the latest, technical moves or whatnot. And if we then see people to really just let themselves go with the music, with the flow, and throw it all out there, I think there is a certain beauty there regardless. Because I don't know, it's humbling, it's beautiful. And I think it goes beyond the technical aspect of doing this or that move correct. And then maybe there is a way to translate that into snowboarding where, yeah, I guess the ones that we admire the most in the sport are not necessarily the ones that follow all the technical rule books, but the ones we really feel like we are part of, like we follow them and their passion and we see something authentic. And I think, yeah, I don't know, when there's certain authenticity in expression, it's oftentimes beautiful.
Whose snowboarding to you comes off as very authentic? Like when you're watching somebody snowboarding, maybe you know them, maybe you don't, but it seems to bleed authenticity.
Yeah, I mean, there's like, who is it not? It's even hard to hide. It's
I
so
don't know.
hard
I
to
feel
hide.
like to me, if I'm being honest, I feel like the easiest pick is Gigi. There's something
Yeah,
about him.
yeah.
It's like, it's so, I've said this before on the podcast, not just because you're a close friend with him or I'm being like, oh, that's the only name in my head right now. It's like, really, like Gigi to me is like, it's such a pure, like, it still looks like happy hour to me. Like he's still just out there, just like having the best time boarding. And it doesn't seem like he's doing it because of sponsors or from exterior pressures, or like, it's just like he just really truly loves to be on that snowboard in that moment. And if you're filming him, he's just happens to be amazing because he's put thousands and thousands of hours in there. And yeah, totally.
Yeah,
His
he's
shifties,
throwing, I don't know.
his
Yeah, yeah.
hands, and oh yeah, I love
Oh,
it.
it's true. Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's true. But yeah, what I was gonna say is like, it's funny because it's hard to even not be like authentic to some extent if you're doing it professional and doing it for so long. That, say, another example, JP Walker, I feel like has that notion of being so controlled in almost like hiding somewhat like of that authenticity of like, he's in a way, he's quite contrary to like Gigi, all over the place, but like so incredibly beautiful in what he does. JP would be like, even the fingertips are like in the right place in some ways. But it's also authentic because like I think there's also so much beauty there, and he's also part of who he is, like, and that he can find, I don't know him personally, honestly, but like I think that's also a real expression, and it's just a different style, but it reflects on who he is and who he chooses to be. And with Torstein, with Travis, like I think when we hear these names, a lot of the listeners may have images in their heads of like how they would move. And I think their move would reflect a lot on who they are, really. Like it doesn't come from nothing somehow. Like when I think of Travis, for instance, that self-confidence that he puts into every turn, it's incredible. Like the way he holds himself, the way he has his spine, it's so straight, the way he stamps those turns into the snow. And it's the same as if you talk to him, the way he looks at you, the way he chooses his words and nails them down, boom, 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 is similar. There's a cohesiveness in all those expressions. And this cohesiveness follows through with all the different areas like that I got to see. And for instance, in Travis, with JP Walker, I just don't know him enough to say more about it, but like I just felt like when I did get to know people, oftentimes it reflected so much of of who they were, and there was such beauty in that reflection, then I could appreciate their snowboarding even more, because it's like, oh yeah, for sure they ride this way.
Oh, that was dope. There's definitely a time period, I think, in every snowboarder's life that they're not being authentic, though. That they look up, they idolize the JPs, the Mark Franks, the Eliases, the Gigis, the Travis Rices, and they just purely tried to emulate those riders. And then I feel like at one point you kind of let that go and you're like, I'm not going to be a Danny Cass. I'm not going to be a Mark Frank. I'm not going to be a Devin. I'm just myself. And that's all I can be. And then you kind of let go of trying to emulate and just be that pro. And then you've become the snowboarder, you're like reborn. I'm almost, and I can see it in snowboarders, right? Like, I feel like I don't mean to, I hope Torstein doesn't take this in a bad way, but I could feel and see Torstein when he was like baggy in this moment, GoPro tall T world phase, like Horgasm, like great snowboarder, but it just didn't seem to be there, like fully authentic. And now when I see him snowboard, there is this like the most Torstein, it's just so perfect. And it's exactly who I think he's always been. And I think that it's one of the reasons why I think that I enjoy his riding so much. I could be completely wrong, but I do feel like there's that one point, and maybe I'm just speaking from my own, my past experience, just trying to emulate these pros, not becoming them, and realizing that I'm only going to be Jody. That's what I got to offer. And you know what? I was never good at spinning fast, and I'm okay with that now. And I'm not the best at pipe, and I'm okay. I can live with that. But there's this one point where you're just trying to like be not yourself. But maybe that's what you need to aspire to reach. Maybe you need that still. I'm not really sure where I'm dragging this conversation, but I'm definitely like, I get in my own head sometimes about being like, you don't need to be anybody but yourself, and just and do that. But then if you never have those heroes and those idols to emulate, then what would you have been in the first place without them? So I don't know.
Yeah. When you talk of Torstein, how do you think his writing has changed? How do you feel like? Can you put words to that?
Yeah, I just feel like just even just the way he talks, he carries himself. I feel like he's just let go of a lot of weight, pressure from sponsors, maybe pressures that he put on himself. The afterbang that he wants, everything just seems more natural. I think he's so confident in his own skin. I think he's just like, I am nothing but Torstein. This is what I am, like it or not. I don't know, even just I've known Torstein for a long time, and I just see the interviews and how he carries himself and how he speaks now. It just comes from a very authentic, humble place, where before I think that it was like, oh, the camera's on, time for the show, where now he's like, the camera could be on or off, and this is who I'm going to be. And to me, I don't know if that's true authenticity. You know what I mean? That's a really complex word to just go into in itself, especially talking to you, somebody who studied psychology. Like, maybe we could even just define that term. I just feel like authenticity is such a gray area, so it's tough to go down that rabbit hole.
Right. Well, but I could totally resonate with what you said. Like, even with Torstein, know him a little bit, and I also really like to see how like this journey has been for him. And when I do see of him, or when I talk to Bernie, who's a close friend of his, like, yeah, he says, hey, Torstein's doing really well, and he's really found his way. And like, as far as like the last conversation I've had with Bernie was just down that line, like along those lines. And it's cool. Like, I could, as a viewer, as an outside person, I could see that sort of journey that he's gone through as well. And I think that's great. And then that reflects in the writing in some ways as well. But I guess, the Torstein that was like maybe even more baggy pants and cooler, like, I don't know, was still him. That was still him trying to be cool and having all the tools in the world to do that, to be that, because he's one of the most talented people out there, and then he's just a version of himself, like just trying to be extra cool, and that's still him. And I think it's still in him, and it's still in his like style. It's still like evolved. It's not like, oh, and now he's striped that all off and he's a total different person on the snowboard. It's just more refined. Maybe it's still the like cool moves he has, but maybe they've become a little more refined, a little more like a little less sort of like acted out. But it's always been him. I think it's just him through different faces. And I think that's what I see as like a certain authenticity that you cannot even get around. It's like it's still been there. Like even his like wanting to be someone has been authentic. And he's been one of the best to ever do it.
Definitely. Like some of the riding he did at Natural Selection, a handful of those guys, I would say Torstein on the top of my head did one of the best runs I think has ever done on a snowboard, like at this year's Natural Selection. Like, I think that there's 5 snowboarders, yourself included, that have navigated down a face and have done that many technical tricks. When I look at your footage, and we can touch base on this more in depthly, Dark Matter, when you're riding down those lines, and I've only rode the mini golf sides of that stuff, it's so hard for someone who's never ridden anything even close to that to comprehend doing a back 5 or a front 1 or front 5 in the middle of your 8K run and then be riding switch. And I think that Torstein, with the butters and the tricks and the 7s and the methods, and even he does like a hard way back 180 butter front 180, like to go off your heels and powder down an AK line at the end of your run and just risk it all. Like it's just, I don't know. He was just bleeding that, and maybe we could throw it back to being in the moment and just dancing and feeling it and letting everything go. I feel like when he was on that run, he just let everything go and just, and then you bounce down the mountain and he just beautifully did that. And maybe on that note of AK, a place that I think that you have absolutely destroyed, and imagining you love that place, maybe the first question I have for you is Alaska. What's that like, and what does that place mean to Elias?
It means a lot to me. That's the one thing I kind of miss from not doing sort of that classic approach to snowboarding anymore. Now that I got a lot more into storytelling and also, yeah, a lot of it is based around here. Like last year, I was a couple of times in Switzerland, and the rest of the time I was home in Innsbruck. It's beautiful. I love it this way, and I wouldn't want to change it because I've traveled and it's cool. Like I love it this way, but like the one place that has moved me so much more than any other place I think in the world has been Alaska. And Haines, I would come back to Haines like, I don't know, maybe 5 times and stay there 3 weeks or so, and then that one time with Travis in the Todrillos. And it's so it's such a special place, so raw in its element, like, so I don't know, it's a weird term to maybe throw out there, but it had something existential to it, this raw nature, like, and then the life threatening experiences that you do have up there with being immersed or like exposed, more to say, like exposed to this raw environment, and not just sort of on the hill on those very few days that you get on the hill, but also everything that goes around it. I love Haines as a town, and just going for a walk on the shore, and I don't know, listening to an audiobook, and it's just, there's something so puristic to this, and I don't know, somehow it just really got a piece of my heart, that place, and I really love it. and it was something I dreamt of doing, and I was really fortunate and grateful I got the chance to do that. And I feel like going back up to Alaska with Travis, mm, even after I've a little bit closed that chapter inside of me, to have that chance to go up with him and be there, with the best setup you could imagine and in amazing conditions. It's almost been like a closing loop to that. And I feel like I could let it be, let it rest, that experience, and just be happy about having experienced it.
Wow. That was articulated very beautifully. That was rad. Dark matter. How did that opportunity present itself?
Yeah, like I said, it's been funny because so this was the year after Contradiction. I've worked on this film so long and so hard, and like I was in Albania preparing the online release, doing subtitles and stuff. So like it's really like in that mindset. Albania still for a team trip with Nitro, and then I was always really intrigued by the Balkans and then those countries there, and so I wanted to go to Kosovo and tell a story in that area. And I've actually been there already the previous summer to like explore stories, to understand what I could say and like what story there was for me to engage into. And then yeah, it was in this little town called Brezovica, where I spent 3 weeks. It was mainly like slushy snowboarding, if anything. We had like one day of powder. So it really was in a totally different mindset of like closing that other film off. And then yeah, snowboarding for this yet again like rather narrative film Narcissus, which was the second film I've done in Kosovo there. And so during that time, Travis wrote me an email saying like, hey, conditions look all time at the moment in Alaska. Like I've hardly ever seen it as good, like, or last time during Art of Flight. I would love to go back up there. I don't have a team yet. Like, do you want to join? And yeah, I guess, yeah, that's really been the starting point. And I then traveled with a filmer from Innsbruck. So I've only stopped home for like a few days, like 3 days or so, and then got on board with a filmer from here, like a great drone filmer, Christoph Thorsen, and Travis came with Sharon, his favorite filmer, one of his favorite filmers, and so we were like a really tight crew of 4 people, like that could fit in one heli load, and that made it so special. We were like, he was like, hey, he's never had that for so many years, such a tight crew. And so that was the setup, and we came and rode for I think 10 days. Like we were only in this location for 2 weeks, and maybe we had like seven good riding days, and that was it. And then the whole film Dark Matter came from those days. And so yeah, for me it was definitely special going from Kosovo and not having really been riding so much into like this dream scenario with Travis. So yeah, it was super amazing.
Describe how you felt and what was going through your head after you say, yes, Travis, I'm coming to Alaska. And then you start thinking to yourself, oh shit, what did I just sign up for? Like, what goes through your head when you go, I'm in?
At this point, I was so on the trip with filmmaking that I was like, oh, this is a great chance to do a film with Travis. Like, I wanted to do a portrait film or something. So it was funny, like, and I think honestly that helped me to take a lot more distance. I think if it was a little earlier in my career, like then I would have been much more identified mainly with my snowboarding and being like, oh fuck, I like, gotta prove myself so much. And I feel like that actually helped me. It was 2 things that helped me. It was that I felt like maybe I don't have to just be the greatest snowboarder, whatever, because, against Travis, I'm not. And then that's been really relieving because I was so clearly in the back seat, like quite literally. And that was so nice. It's been a really nice position to be in because he was in the driving seat and I could just tag along and join. And honestly, I didn't feel like the pressure to prove him. I don't know why, but like for some reason, I felt comfortable enough to like show up and ride, but then also say no when I didn't feel good enough in some areas, like, or didn't feel comfortable enough, like for some of the crazy faces that he painted doing. I don't know. It felt okay. It felt pretty all right.
Are you good at listening to your gut in those situations?
Not always, but in this moment, I felt I was happy that I could listen to myself and my gut because. Yeah.
Sorry, continue.
No, I think because it actually helped not having to be someone again and in front of Travis, like because it's not like there's any competition. If anything, like I was his little brother, or at least me, it was more like a big brother situation where he took me along, and that was great. It's just been amazing for me, and I was like so fortunate and so happy that I got this opportunity. But it certainly didn't feel like I would trying, I don't know, for somehow prove him something. I don't know, it had something more relaxed than maybe in other situations where you feel sort of the projections from other people onto you, like who you ought to be or who you got to prove to be. I don't know, it just hasn't, I didn't feel as much in this situation like it.
Were you studying psychology before this trip?
Yeah.
That's why. You're a wise man at this point. You got some experience under your belt, and you're kind of like, you know what? I'm just gonna come here and I'm gonna snowboard to the best of my ability, but not. It would be easy, as most snowboarders get pretty excited and want to push the limits of their skills, especially when riding with Travis Rice. But when you're riding such complex terrain, there's massive risk in you pushing out of your element. You know what I mean? So it is good when you're riding that complicated of terrain, it's good to listen to your gut. And I watched Dark Matter again yesterday, just to kind of, refresh my mind on not only your footage, but how much of a psycho Travis is. And trying to put myself in your shoes and what that would feel like. And I don't think that 2019 Jody would be mature enough to go on a trip with Travis Rice. I think that I would be the guy in one of those Bergstroms covered in my slough that you never hear from again.
I'm not sure. I think honestly, it wasn't like a thing like where it's like, oh, I've grown up and then I could handle these situations. Actually, funnily enough, like the year after that season, I was I was doing the post-production of Narcissus throughout the summer, and also pre-production or like preparation for a film with Travis. Like I wanted to do that film with Travis. Like I was like actually quite involved. I was like, yeah. But then, as things are, it didn't happen because he was really motivated to do it. But then with natural selection coming closer, he said like he needed to focus on this and he cannot take on to like a big project. So then it didn't happen. And then I was like a bit like, oh, so now I've always been doing these film projects. And then I got into the Freeride World Tour just to structure my time a little bit, which I wasn't totally convinced of doing. But then I was like, yeah, I found myself at some of those stops. I did 3 and I did terrible, like so bad. And like I did really I was really beside myself, and I really felt like I needed to be someone, prove myself, and everything but to do great would have been a loss. So I don't know. I wanted to like also bring that up, that for me, I would really struggle at times also with that role, like, and with those goals I set for myself. And so I don't know. And that was after dark matter. So I feel like it's been a bit like a roller coaster through my career, where I did have different experiences which I could learn from, and some worked better and others where I was like a little more disorientated. But I think in a bigger picture, I had more chances to be content with where I was at in a later stage of my career than in an earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of snowboard careers that the vast majority of professional snowboarders, I would say, is a roller coaster. And I feel like the brands that always keep the guy on the roller coaster and that has that it factor, you always end up on top, because I'm imagining from the beginning of your career until now, if you were, Nitro, you've been on them for a long time, or Dakine or Smith or whatever. The roller coaster, you go up sometimes and you're killing it and you're doing great at the contest world, or you're killing the Pirates movies, but then you have a couple off years. But if they quit before dark matter, you know what I mean? They would have never. Oh, it's so nice getting that support from brands and aligning yourself with companies who kind of believe in the the vision of Elias. Because I mean, if you aligned yourself with poor brands at the beginning of the day, it probably wouldn't be we probably wouldn't have watched Dark Matter, which was, I would argue, one of the best riding lines, technical free riding movies ever. And I know that you say that, like, Travis definitely has the wheel. I think that there's no snowboarder that would argue that, anybody could go on that trip and probably outperform Travis. I thought you rode so good, and your trick selection, like the natty back 180. Oh my God. Like, no grab, that sick poke, he back fives, and this back seven, the front seven was amazing. It's like really, really exceptional riding. And I thought that your style and your flow in that movie was amazing. And I'm not saying this, but Nicholas Mueller, ladies and gentlemen, did say one time that Elias is the best method in snowboarding. I found that. I found an interview where Nicholas says that, and I was like, that was so sick.
I've never heard that. That was maybe a joke, but no,
he does fade it off into like a laugh, like kind of like a laugh. But I was like, no, he's laughing because he's like, well, maybe I have one of the best methods, or Jamie Lynn, but like, you're in that club.
well, yeah, I'm not sure about this one, but the thing, what I guess what I wanted to bring up before was that I feel like there's always been also losses or like setbacks, which I feel like I could also learn so much from, or like, which have certainly been there. And then there's been highlights, and then there's been really hard, like, things you just kind of push through, and then at the end it maybe becomes good. And so, yeah, like for me, it's been cool to see that this has all been sort of a part of that journey. And then sometimes it just falls into place, like with that one trip with Travis, which has really been only 10 days and everything kind of aligned. But there's been so many sort of like ups and downs before that.
Totally.
And I could imagine that Travis would say the same thing with things that he's done. Just, I don't know. That's cool. And I don't want to come across as like, yeah, so whatever wise thing, is just so, I think it's so natural for everyone, like, to just have these setbacks all the time, and like humbling experiences. And then sometimes it works, and then it's amazing.
That's a good way to put it. Humbling experiences. I like that. Instead of just like, oh, this, like, setback sounds almost like more of a negative, but humbling experiences make it seem like your negative is just something that you're kind of learning from. What about,
Yeah,
sorry, shoot.
Yeah, and it actually really, like, I've taken so much freedom from these humbling experiences, if you want to call them, because then if you're only winning or you're only sort of like achieving, the next thing is to redo it again or to do it better, and then to like kind of maybe fall short of your own expectations. Sometimes it's like, okay, I can land with myself, I can be okay with it, and maybe the thing happened that I was afraid of happening, and it's all good. So for me, it's really been, some of those moments were actually kind of encouraging.
Describe what's going through your head when you get in a helicopter. Travis Rice is there, the two filmers, and you're about to get dropped off on top of your line, and you're getting out of the heli. The heli leaves. It's quiet. What are you thinking of? What's in your head?
Depended on the line. At times I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. And at times I was like, what did I get myself into here? Serious? I had both emotions very strongly there, for sure.
Okay. Okay, so sometimes you get dropped off, you're like, let's fucking go. Other
Yes.
times you said, like, what did I get myself into? The helicopter leaves. All you have is your Avy bag, your snowboard, and what looks like the infinite abyss of just Alaskan mountains rolling endlessly, and a speck maybe at the very bottom where that's the filmer very, very far away. There is no pulling out at that point. You kind of have to ride the line, correct? Correct? Can you say, come pick
Yeah.
me back up?
Not really. Like in maybe total emergency, but yeah, oftentimes it happens with a tow in. So like the heli doesn't actually land. It's more hovering, and so you get out really slowly. So for them to like do a tow in for you to get back into the heli is quite a mission, I guess. So it's possible. It's not impossible, but like oftentimes it's more like, okay, now you pick this line, now you gotta also pursue it or get down. So yeah, like if I think of this one moment where we did take a very quick decision on a huge phase, more loaded than it should be, like to ride such a big phase, everything. And I could also see that Travis was actually nervous in this, and trying to do some avalanche assessment up there. And I was just like, I really wanted to just get down there as safe as possible. I didn't care as much about the filming anymore. And so I picked a line, well, which I had in mind, but I really stuck to it, that I only stayed on the ridge. So if anything was to happen left or right, like I would be on the high point, and I really, really, really followed through on this. It's actually in the new film Invisible Ground, that very line that like, and we talk about this, that I wanted to just get down as safe as possible, and kind of like I even stop in the middle of the line just checking, because even a little Avy released, like tiny but still big enough to like accumulate a lot of snow once it got moving. So anyways, that was one of those moments where it's just like, okay, get down there. And then there's been other moments during Dark Matter where it was a lot more playful, and where I was just so excited, and I was like, let me ride, like I want to really, yeah, it's just been amazing. And it's been some of those, yeah, dream moments that I would love to get back to, or just be grateful for like having had that moment, and to be like 3, 2, 1, drop, and you're like, yes. So I think this is the feeling you should have to be riding well as well. Otherwise, I don't know, it doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I can't say that I'm somebody who would envy the feeling of being on top of a line and then being like, I don't want to be up here. Like that feeling seems so daunting to me because yeah, I don't know why. I spend a lot of my time in the mountains, and sometimes when you're sledding around, you just get this like feeling like deep inside, and one of your friends is stuck in a bad place, or you're sledding, or you're about to get into a line, or one of your friends is gonna ride something that you're not that comfortable with, and there's a oh, that feeling is hard to describe, but it is. I don't get it often. It's not like all the time, but when I get that, I'm like, oh, I don't like this feeling. And thank God so far Mother Nature has been on my side with that. I'm curious to know if the shot you're talking about is in dark matter, because there's one shot in particular that stands out to me. You do about 2 turns, and on the right hand side it seems to fracture. I can't tell if it's just like soft slab or if it's actually like kind of deep, but you continue on that line, and I'm wondering, like, I it seems so crazy to me how smart you and Travis are navigating down these lines, because you're on the ridge, but every once in a while you go into the guts to get onto the next ridge, but then there's slough moving down. How do you manage all these things in your head? Or when you drop in, do you just kind of like it just blacks out and you just like trust your gut? You've looked at the line on a iPhone or
No, I think I feel like simplifying it, like bringing it down to the core elements of what you're trying to do is really important, because it's really complex if you take everything into consideration. And I do like to look at it as much as possible and get all the info of like snow quality and all this, which really is important, but then have those few points in mind to get from here to here, do a turn here, don't cross here because the slough here. So you have those like really clear sort of set things in your mind that you want to follow through. If something was to go wrong, I go here. And try and really follow with those well, orders or like those guidelines you give yourself. And I think the more straightforward those guidelines are, the better. And the more you can really act in spontaneity. What is that? Like
spontaneity.
Spontaneity. Yeah, exactly. So like, I think because you have to anyways, it's never going to go exactly as you plan. So there will be some spontaneity. No, there will be, certainly. And I think the more solid your framework is to move within, the better you can act it. Like you can be spontaneous and just play around with it, but you certainly have to have that framework that you feel comfortable about, like especially when it's so dangerous. And I've found that this is so essential to like have that framework and to really work on that in your mind, and to have a really good plan of what to do, where to go, what if something goes wrong, all these what ifs, to have a good approach to it.
You and Travis were riding some of the most complex lines ever. How many checkpoints is too many checkpoints? I feel like for me, it'd be like, okay, I got to get up onto this ridge, and then I go over to the big snowy nose knoll, and I'm going to do a turn under that. And then that's where I do my back 3. Then there's going to be slough going down the chute. Just get over to the next knoll. And then there's the double boob, and then I do the ollie, and then I do the backside air, and then I do a method, and then I get the last spine, and then I got to ollie the Bergstrom, and then I do a frontside 3. And then if I'm really feeling it, I go for the back 7 right at the end. Like, like that's like 12 things. It's like, and then Travis's last 2 or 3, it's like there must have been like 25 checkpoints. Like,
yeah, he's been obsessed with watching those lines though and studying them, like literally, like that one base mathematics that's us the final to the film. Like he's been so meticulous with like working it through his head and visualizing it. He's really been so, I don't know, so on point with this, and it really comes to show with the confidence he's writing it with. And I think that that's really it, that like the more you get into the movement already and the line already in your head, if you've kind of visualized it, the more it feels natural and the more you can really be present in it. And the more you can also reduce it to the essentials. If you don't have to think of the turn here or there because you almost feel like you've done it, you don't have to like think it, it feels really natural to go that way, then you could really be more like, okay, the speed for this hit here, I should kind of take out speed because whatever, the landing's so short. Or so like those essential elements you want to think of, you can be more present there if you've done all the work to like to act all the other parts sort of natural, or like to have that flow.
What's the biggest takeaway from filming with Travis? What did you learn hanging out with Travis Rice?
So one thing that was more like about my own approach, I was really happy to be sort of standing my own ground, that I wasn't trying, I don't know, I guess I wasn't risking more than I wanted to, with maybe that one exception I just talked about, which is more of a like that occasion. But like oftentimes I felt more like, okay, I can actually sort of be sort of okay and safe in this environment. And that was something really encouraging, empowering in some ways. Because yeah, there was a lot of decisions I had to take for myself. And I was like, oh, that I was really happy about. And then with Travis, hanging out with Travis, the one thing that I really admire in him is his recognition of others. Like he's really just, he is that persona, you know, that a lot of people project onto, like as the hero figure and everything. But when you get to know him, he's really caring of his surrounding. And I really like that about him. And I don't know if I've seen so many other professional athletes to do it to this extent that he does. Like there's this one moment that I was with my girlfriend at the time. We were out when he was visiting me the year after Dark Matter in Austria, and we were riding together. And we were with her and a friend of hers, like just hiking onto a line, and which they've never done. And then he gave her the like GoPro, say like, hey, yeah, you know, capture it. And it could have been a great line for him to capture it on his GoPro, and he's riding for GoPro, whatnot. But like he was caring for her, not for anyone else to see, but I could see how much he was caring. And he was really guiding them through and giving them the opportunity to experience that. And I think that little example was something so impressive to me. And I've seen it many times after, that he was really like having an eye for others. And with all the achievement, all the things he's done, I think that's the most beautiful things. And that's the most admirable thing I can see in him. Yeah, that I like.
Sounds like an amazing person. I have lots of friends that are close friends with him, and I don't think I've ever heard a bad thing about him. Like he seems like a stand-up guy that is completely obsessed with snowboarding, completely obsessed with growing snowboarding. And similar to like you're making movies now, you're pushing into new avenues, you're exploring new things. Travis has been pushing not only his snowboarding, but the entirety of snowboarding, with events like the Natural Selection, which you've attended. You know, the Freeride World Tour has been around for a while. What's the main difference between Natural Selection and the Freeride World Tour?
It showcases snowboarding so much better, the Natural Selection. It just fits snowboarding and it highlights snowboarding. And it's also in sort of at the heart of our snowboard culture. Whereas sorry, the Freeride World Tour just is more based in free riding and in more like this mountaineering sort of approach to free riding in the backcountry. Oftentimes it's like really exposed rock faces that are not all that much fun to ride in terrible conditions sometimes. And then, you know, with your one edge being on the snowboard, you only have one edge. And then with skis, it may be different and they like go through the moguls, but it doesn't even look good. It doesn't look fun and actually isn't fun. And so like, I always like, I don't know. I don't want to talk shit about it because there's also great people on tour that like ride the tour, and I have found so much more appreciation for their skill level because I could tell like how difficult it is to make that look good. And I also know that the people working on tour, like it's hard to set up a tour. Like I think they're just coming from a different direction that like, you know, incorporating all these different interests. There's also many skiers that love like the extreme sort of alpinist approach to it. And this is what they want to do. And so I think this is the middle ground that they meet. And so it's a different format. But for my snowboarding and for what I love, certainly natural selection has the much better venue. And yeah, and then all the people come together that I guess, yeah, all the best snowboarders in the world that like that terrain come together to ride it. And I think it's a really beautiful event that Travis has set up there.
Yeah, he's sculpted quite the event that does exactly what you just said. It showcases snowboarding so well. There's like a couple things that I think that maybe they could work on. I'm curious to know, as an athlete, as somebody who probably watched it afterwards, is there anything you think that they could change to make this event better for maybe not only the audience and the viewers watching at home, but also for the riders? Or would you say it's a home run, don't change anything, keep it the same?
Maybe I haven't been involved as much this past year or like in watching, but I think the first stop, Jackson Hole, is like a proper slopestyle run covered in fresh snow. And I think that some of those lines may have been quite straightforward, you know, like you have these big booters and so on, like, and so there's been not as much space to like just find new playful elements in there, which I feel like was a pity also for, well, for myself, very like riders myself, and as well for the female riders, where I felt like there was these big booters that were just like, okay, this is like a 20 meters hit, and then the next whatever 15 20 meters hit, where I feel like there is so much beauty in those like natural hits that don't need to be so giant, and it could be really technical. And I think I would love to see a lot more like this. Actually, that was one of the feedbacks that I've given, where it's like, I'm not sure, maybe there is a way to like build a lot more like smaller playful features in there that could be written in various ways, that could be interpreted in different ways, that offer more opportunities for those riders that are not like set out for like a big slopestyle run, and maybe also for female riders to shine more and show what they can do, because that I feel like was a pity in the last one, that like I love a lot that they do give them the venue and everything, but some of those jumps, it's so hard to get through, and maybe there was a better way to give them the stage and give them the opportunity to show what they can do really.
Yeah, it did turn into a little bit of a what seemed to be a slope style contest at last year's and this year. You know, people would go and then there would be the line set in the snow, and it'd be like, okay, front one, and then they would land on the first hit. Everybody would kind of do their setup trick like it was off the roller, and then do their back seven, cab five, or whatever, and then they go into the next feature. And it was really sick. I remember the first year when Mikkel kind of paved way and did that front three rock tap, and I'm looking at a little bit more of the really big natural terrain riders like yourself, EJack. It's like that's just not how they're not at these events, and they weren't selected to do the best slope style run. But I understand how they have to like. I like that you said that they need to just incorporate new features, because I think they should keep those jumps, but they have to be able to judge free riders differently and still give them credit where credit is due, because there's definitely other elements than just hitting the jump that are just as technical and just as awesome. And I definitely felt like, I think that the viewers would get bored if it was like the first Jackson hole and it was just jump, and people are doing front sevens, back tens and stuff like that. It just starts to look like X Games already. So yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Snake Milkers, that like another Travis Rice film. That one was wild to me. Even just watching you jump into the boat. Was this film fun? Was this a good one to make? You mixed up the crew a little bit. Mark Landvick, Mark McMorris, Blake Paul, Snake Milkers. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it was super fun. I think I was on the crew for like 4 days. It was like a 8 days thing, and like I filmed something before that with Jason Robinson, which has also been really cool. And then yeah, the opportunity to jump on their program as well, which was so amazing. Like we're going down the river with this boat and ride those lines off the boat, and yeah, I stayed with Travis at his place, and then we would always go in the morning and go the next section of the river down. And conditions have been super good, super stable, fortunately, because it's not a place you'd want to have anything slide, because everyone's obviously going into the river. It was super cool, and it was an amazing contrast as well to sort of the sledding I did also. So all of this was after the natural selection contest. I did some sledding with Travis, 1 day only, which is of course like super loud and violent in some ways, like that's that sort of mood, which can be really exciting. But then it was a nice contrast to be out there, like you just have the water, like the river, and then the like snowshoes, and I don't know, it was really, really nice, and I was happy to get to know this side of Jackson Hole as well.
Yeah, totally different frequency playing in the brain, going from snowmobiling to paddling down a river.
Yeah.
Mark McMorris, Blake Paul, and Mark Landvick was some of the other crew that was there. Maybe just touch on those 3 individuals. Yeah, what were they like to film with? And
yeah, I really like Mark Landwick. He's this is incredible guy that I really got along super well with all throughout this whole time around the natural selection. Really caring as well. Mark McMorris, of course, is this incredible, talented snowboarder that actually during Dark Matter also during Dark Matter, at the end of this time we've had up there, he would come up with his brother, and we had a day together, or 2 days together with Travis as well. So I got to spend a few times now in filming backcountry situations with him, and it was really cool to see like how much he is, I don't know, putting in to haunt that, like to develop that skill and translate it, because he's already the best slopestyle rider in the world, I guess, and so to see him progress that into the backcountry and really putting in all this effort and also struggle with it at times, yeah, was cool to see. And then he was really nice, like humbling at times, and and then Blake is cool because I was riding against Blake in the natural selection. I was up against Blake, and that was humbling for me because you come on the other side of the world, you like trying to do well, and I tried my best, and I just couldn't put down my run in the end. And Blake was riding so incredible. Like I had, I've watched it up on the screen just before dropping, and I was like, oh shit, like now I really, really gotta like up my game here. So it's really cool to see, and I was really impressed by his riding. Like honestly, like seeing him live, he is so controlled and so, I don't know, spot on his board. So yeah, it was cool to like be in this group of people and get the chance to ride with them.
Who are some of your favorite snowboarders to watch? You've ridden with everybody. You touch on J-Rob there, which maybe we should just go on a little tangent and talk about J-Rob for a bit, because man, that guy is a beast. But yeah, can you touch on J-Rob for a second, and give a little insight to him, filming with him, his personality, and then maybe touch on a few of your favorite snowboarders?
Yeah, well, that's the same. J-Rob is one of my favorite.
Me too. I love J-Rob.
Yeah, J-Rob, a great personality, and he's one of those like incredibly talented riders that maybe never exhausted his full potential, like because he's just had other things going on in life, but he's just so talented. Like if he like had that same determination as some of the other riders that make it to like the very top, he could have taken his talent to incredible heights. And the stuff that he did do was like has been amazing. And so yeah, for me, when I think of J-Rob, I think of some genius little moves, like you ride, follow him in the resort, and he just like does these things. You're like, what? Wait a second, did you just do that? So yeah, that's about him. And then other riders, of course, I'm gonna name some of those classic ones that I grew up riding with, like that I watched riding and that then I got the chance to ride with. And it's Nicholas as well. Like Nicholas, I just love his snowboarding. And I've watched it growing up. And there is such genius in his riding style, as well as like, yeah, it's pretty amazing. Like I don't know if there's ever been anyone in this regard as technical as him in the backcountry.
No, the only person I could even think that has like that same flow, and I feel like some people might be like, what? But I think Freddie K is like somebody who is, I've watched some of his older video parts religiously, and he has some parts that just flew under the radar as far as tricks and talent and tweaks and stuff. But I agree, nobody has been on Nicholas's wavelength.
Like
No
the,
way.
the technical things, like when I think of Travis, he puts it all together, the technicity of things, but then the complexity of like he can really haunt it all to like such a different level. But yeah, like some of those guys, like everyone has their own quality really. But yeah, Travis, Nicholas, Gigi as well. I feel like those are some of the classic names that come to my mind, that each have their very own expertise that is just super beautiful to watch, and that I hardly have seen anywhere else.
All right, I'm gonna ask you a quick question, and we'll get to 10 questions I ask every guest. But what is the Mount Baker of Europe? I've always wondered this, and I was like, man, it's a good question for myself, just because is there like a Mount Baker, good vibes, like shredders, that you're like, oh, everybody that goes to this resort in Europe is just about it?
Huh.
Or is
You know,
Mount Baker just
it's much more distributed all over, like when in many different resorts. So there's not this one resort where I feel like, oh, this is where people move to like have that ski bump life, you know? Which I don't know if that Mount Baker would be, but it it does feel like there's so much culture in Mount Baker that I don't know of any place like it in Europe that could closely have this much culture, board sport culture, as Mount Baker has. I feel like it's really much more in many resorts distributed, and that's in some ways the beauty of Europe as well, because you can pick and choose so many resorts and you don't run into so many tracks, and like it's I see a lot of advantage, but yeah, maybe it's lacking a little bit that core culture that you have in some of those spots in the US.
what's the flowiest, best resort if it snows in all of Europe? Like if it, like what's got like the natural half pipes, and you know, what's the zone?
Mhm.
You don't want to
I
take.
like to go, well, Arlberg region is great because it's a bigger region that you have several resorts in that gets a lot of snow coverage that I really like to go to. And then all the stuff around Innsbruck, Hochfügen is one of those places, classic, that I like to go to. And I just have spent so many good days with my friends riding there. Yeah, I guess those would be two of the locations I could think of the top of my head.
Awesome. All right. Best style currently and back in the day.
Well, I will say back in the day, Nicholas, and currently I'm not updated enough, I don't think, to say that Rene.
Sick. If you could only do one trick for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Backflip.
Most underrated boarder.
J-Rob.
Good, good pick. That was sick. Best trick you witnessed with your own eyes.
Travis do a back seven at the end of a huge line. Actually, that intimidating line I talked about earlier. And he was just like doing it left and right. And I don't know if it's the best, but it's one of the most impressive moments where it's like, really?
All right, career highlight.
Doing Contradiction.
That's a good film. If you haven't seen that, Contradiction, highly recommend watching it. And one more time, what's your next film that's coming out, just so people can keep an eye out?
Invisible Ground.
Okay, Invisible Ground, people, tune in. Who's the gnarliest boarder of all time?
Travis.
Who has the best pop on a snowboard?
That's a very specific one. I have no idea. Oh yeah, Atya.
How was that?
That's simple.
I was hoping you'd say that. Favorite snowboard movie of all time, or one that you consume the most?
I think 91 Words for Snow at that time.
No one said that. Good pick. That movie's good. 91 Words for Snow. No one said 9191 yet either. I've been waiting for that one because I feel like, you know, that movie's fucking fire.
Yeah. But also I have to say, like, it's never an objective. It's also which phase of your life does this fall into? And for me, 91 Words for Snow has just been a phase of my life. It really got me. And I'm sure there's been other films, but for me, it was that moment that I was like, it really moved me. Like, I was like, yes, this is it. This is why I want to do it. And yeah, David Benedek has been doing it. So it's been still the one film I would highlight.
Do you feel social media is going to ruin snowboarding and action sports?
No, I think it's just finding new formats. And I think that classic format of trick films, I think, is just moved into social media. And then we find new formats with storytelling, with other venues. I think it's only changing formats.
All right. Favorite cover?
I'm not sure. Maybe it's some backside air of Nicholas method.
The ollie. There's an ollie of Nicholas with no grab, and he's just ollieing. J-Rob has, I'm pretty sure, a really sick cover too. Similar, just massive ollie, and I love just ollies. Fuck, they're sick.
Right. You know, maybe you have a lot more covers in mind than I do. Moment. But yeah.
All right. Number 10. Who is the GOAT?
It's a weird. Well, in my generation, growing up, so greatest of all time would assume is like it's all of all times. But I could say of my generation, it would be Travis.
Most people say Travis, and I mean, yeah, he's had like a 20-year career of being the gnarliest snowboarder ever.
Yeah. Someone else maybe says, I don't know, Terrier, or, you know, so like I think it's also a matter of the generation you grow up in, or like I don't know, a younger writer may say Mark, or I don't know. What other answers did come? I'd be curious.
Pat Moore has been said. Torstein. Travis Rice gets said a lot. What else? I'm kind of blanking on the top of my head. Yeah, that's and Terrier, Nicholas. I think somebody said Gigi. I would say 80% of people say Travis Rice.
Isn't that crazy though? Like,
yeah.
So
even the rail riders. Like, even like if I have like a full-on steel kid on here, they're like, Travis Rice. I forget who Jake Olsen Elm said, but that one was not a Travis Rice. I forget who he said. I had one more question for you here. Oh, do you think that there is anybody who is en route to rivaling what Travis Rice has accomplished snowboards? Like, do you think anybody in the near future will ever ride as good as Travis Rice?
Different. Yeah, I think so. Like, just different. Yeah, like I said, maybe I'm not in it as much to like say, okay, this and this kid, but for sure there's some, like when you look at Mark, just the technicity he's developed, like the air awareness. Like I think even Travis would look at Mark thinking like, holy shit, like that's a whole different level. So in some aspects, of course, people are better than Travis. It's just more the combination of all those skills that Travis put into his writing and being the most complete and most accomplished writers in all these fields. But for sure, as time continues, there's new progress and there's all these different writers coming up that add to the sport, really.
I've never seen anybody navigate down a line like Travis. And I watched that last clip in Dark Matter, the last two that he has. And I think that there's like 25 crucial points of not screwing up. I'm like, I don't know if anybody's going to get there.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on the podcast. Thank you for making these snowboard films that are different, that are unique, that get me to think. Thank you for all your hard work that you've put into snowboarding. I feel like a lot of professional snowboarders the amount of effort that goes into each clip is insane. Days, weeks, sometimes. So thank you for devoting all your time to filming these video parts that have inspired myself and so many people around the world to find love in a piece of wood to slide down a mountain, because I think that the snowboard community is a special place, and there's a lot of like-minded individuals who help shape a better world. And I think the more people that come into this space, the better off we are.
Well, I'm happy that you, yeah, well, there's so much appreciation from your side. Thanks from my end. I'm not sure about the better world part. I think that we all like struggle with this one, and like, well, I guess it's a continuous struggle really to make it a better place.
Totally.
Didn't want to take away your last words.
No, not at all. I like that you said
like,
that. That's a good conversation. If you disagree
it's
with
just
everybody,
like
so shoot.
snowboarding itself doesn't make the world better yet. Maybe quite the contrary, because it is quite energy and intensive, and it is very privileged. So I think we could just recognize that and then see that as a maybe starting point, or as an obligation for all of us to like see other areas where we can contribute to a better place, because we are so privileged.
Yeah, that's a double-edged sword though, because I'll go because I feel like a lot of people, they enter snowboarding, they go out into these beautiful places like Alaska, they go to Whistler, they go to Europe, Japan, and I feel a lot of these people afterwards realize how special and how fragile these ecosystems, and how we all should strive to be a better person. I feel like my love for snowboarding has far exceeded what I would have done and what I would have advocated for if I had just stayed in Winnipeg and just, worked and lived in that city. I'm imagining I wouldn't care too much about much, but I feel like things like this podcast and things like your movies have the ability to inspire the next generation of outdoor enthusiasts to take a stance on what they believe in, voting for the right. I think voting might be the most important. The small changes on an individual level, I believe, are important, but I feel like voting for change on national, global, provincial scale is maybe the most effective for change. And I feel like people like yourself coming on this podcast and being an advocate for less travel, it seems like, on airplanes, and buying one-time used goods or cheap shitty articles of clothing that you're not going to use over. I think that just minimizing everything, as I've said on the podcast many times before, the answer is never more of anything. I feel like even like you chasing, I like that you touched on going to Alaska, and maybe you don't need to go back. You know what I mean? It's something that you can hold dear to you. But I feel like, yeah. So I agree with what you were saying, but I think that it's a double-edged sword.
Oh, certainly, there's a lot of contradiction in that. Like, to get to a place where you can find so much appreciation or care to like secure something after you've burned so much fossil fuels, and so that's all part of that, for sure, truth. But I think when you said like voting is really important, and I totally agree, and being open and vocal about it, not like in a good way, trying to find conversations. I think that's really helpful. And I think that's beautiful also that snowboarding has become so much more open to talk about it, like just about things that matter, like really. It's amazing. I like that. And then everyone like is an expert in their very own field. And I feel like that's the biggest thing. Like we all are like good in one thing, and we work in an area, and we can make a difference in that area. And oftentimes we have a space to decide for this or that direction, whether it's a bigger decision or a smaller one. And I think that's the biggest thing, our workforce, like what we put our work and time into. I think that really determines our contribution to the world. And I think we can make a difference in how we decide to spend that time.
I am very excited to see your new film. And I think that I'm imagining that in the near future, you're going to make some amazing films. And are you going to continue, maybe before I let you get out of here, what does the near future look for Elias? Are you going to be focusing on filming your best video part ever and outdoing your riding? Are you going to be focused more than ever on these films?
Yeah.
Or is there something completely new that you're about to dive into?
I think I'm really excited about filmmaking at the moment, and I want to learn in that space, and I want to really do films that move people. I think that's the best I would want to do, and move people, and also maybe encourage in some of those questions that are so important to me as well, and share them with others. I think that's what I would want to do, because I think the narratives we live by are so powerful. They shape our reality. And if I can be a part of that narrative, or part of that conversation that shapes those narratives, I think that's the place I'd want to be in.
The last thing I will say is that your Instagram post on the women's Olympics, Zoe and those girls hugging, I don't really know how to reiterate that caption, but that was one of the best Instagram posts I think I've ever read. I thought that was well put. Do you remember that post for one?
I don't do so many, so yeah.
Okay, so maybe before we let you go here, what was going through your head at that time, and what was that post trying to what were you trying to speak on? Because I feel like that post was pretty powerful, and I also feel like it was, like you were saying, like not just having surface level conversations and going a little deeper. I feel like you used your social platform there for like something that was like really impactful.
I don't know how much of an impact I can have, but like the thing is, really, I was moved. I was like really moved watching this, and it had that backstory that like 4 years prior, like I felt like the girls who trained for this event for so many years were so disregarded, and were like, I think it was really like, it hurt to see, them hurting themselves on a slopestyle course where it was so windy that hardly anyone could go through it, like, and they had to start basically, and were left to sort of the randomness of whatever conditions would offer them, the wind would do with them, and then come short in some of those hits and hurt themselves, and kind of not being able to show their best snowboarding due to those unfortunate decisions there being taken, and conditions that they were presented with, and to see that 4 years after they came back and did that together, and I felt like there was a spirit on the screen, at least for me to see, where it's like, hey, they're actually together in this, and they get to show their best snowboarding, and I'm really excited to see this. Like, I'm thrilled. I want to watch this. I wish I could ride like them, and I could see that in the finishing gate, that they were really like, I don't know, they were a team together, like, and I like that, and I felt like there was a spirit there that I wanted to sort of highlight and share what moved me in this moment, with this whole backstory, So I guess that's why I did it.
Okay, just one last question, I swear, and then I'm gonna let you go. Olympics. What are your thoughts on the Olympics? I feel like you have you didn't ever vocalize, but it seems like you're obviously a strong advocate for sustainability, a greener future, as we all should be. What are your thoughts on something like the Olympics? And do you think this is making society better? Do you think that what they're trying to accomplish there is outweighing the negative?
Well, yes, it has so much history and it's this huge platform, and it's just unfortunate. I feel like that wherever so much power is accumulated, it often is sort of misused. Not always. Like, I'm not trying to get into any conspiracy theories that every time power is accumulated, it will be misused. It's not where I'm heading at, but like you see it at the soccer federation that's also really powerful, and the Olympics, where I'm like, come on, they could do so much good as well, but then they bend down to the most, I don't know, what's it, rigid regimes, really, to like, I don't even know why they would do some of those decisions that are oftentimes politically not really, I don't know, helpful for the greater good. And so honestly, without going too much into detail, just because I don't know of it enough, but the impression that I've gotten from some of those decisions in terms of like where to like host the games and how to use that incredible platform that you would have, and so many missed chances, I guess, to advocate for something, for a certain unity. And I think it's unfortunate, because I think it's a great opportunity if the whole world looks at one thing that is not just whatever. I don't know, what other things do we have in our world that like everyone looks at and feels okay with watching, like whether it's from China, Russia, US, Europe. Like, it's a sport event, and that could be an amazing opportunity, and I wish they could use that better for a greater good other than financial interest. And sometimes I feel like they choose the latter, which is unfortunate.
Wonderfully said. Any shout outs, any closing remarks?
Well, I've talked a lot about those companions already that are very prominent, like Travis, but there's also so many other companions that I've had throughout this career that I did not mention. That being filmers, photographers, all the people, behind this, and then of course my closest people that I shared all this journey with, on the mountain and off the mountain. So I don't know, it would be weird to even drop any name, because I would miss out so many others. But I think, yeah, I'm just happy and grateful for all those people that follow me in that journey. And well, for those still listening, thanks for the interest.
Awesome. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Don't worry. Like and subscribe. Airtime Podcast. Turn that bell on.
Cody,
Don't miss an episode.
this is the battery that you grabbed this morning?
Yeah.
I don't really ramp anymore, but it is there.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you just want to do it.
And the thing is, it might have been fucking you if you filmed it slow and you have to like try to fuck with it in here. Like, you don't want to speed it up here and then ramp it.
Yeah.
You want to like